Listening in on that is legal analyst Thamsanqa Malusi, who joins us now, Thamsanqa, to take a look at South Africa's prospects. But before we can do that, what is the Republic's case? Mr. Malusi, are you with us?
Oh, yes, I am. I didn't realize you were actually directing the question at me. Thank you, Dudu. So South Africa has brought its case in terms of the Genocide Convention, which both Israel and South Africa are signatories to. And they're arguing that following the events of 7th of October 2003, when Hamas launched an indiscriminate attack in Israel, and Israel responded with a military invasion of Gaza. Through that military operation, Israel has violated its obligations as provided for in the Genocide Convention. So in a nutshell, that's the case that South Africa is bringing. And because both South Africa and Israel are signatories to the Genocide Convention, they are both bound by the convention, which is how international law operates. So countries are only bound by such convention or treaties in international law which they are signatories to.
In fact, we just heard as much from the president of Israel saying that they will be there, they're preparing their own case. And so in an opinion piece, you speak about the legal intricacies and you attempt to outline them. What are they?
Yeah, I think what I say in the piece is that one, it's not unique to this case that there are complications whenever there are matters of serious public interest that are legal in nature. But I think there's also added complications, specifically in this case, given the fact that it is argued at the International Court of Justice, and that is not something that happens very often, particularly in the case of South Africa. We haven't had many cases, if at all, argued before the International Court of Justice, and the rules that operate there are slightly different to, domestic law rules. So, for example, as I just stated, South Africa is bringing the case under the Genocide Convention, and they could only bring we could only bring a case in respect of a convention that we are party to. And specifically with regard to the ICJ, the reason why we're using the ICJ, or South Africa rather, is using the ICJ as a court to adjudicate the matter is because both South Africa and Israel are members of the UN, and in terms of the UN Charter, members of the UN are automatically subject to the jurisdiction of the ICJ. So not only are South Africa and Israel bound by the statute of the ICJ, they also bound, or rather they've already subjected themselves to the jurisdiction of the ICJ. Hence, the ICJ can hear the matter before the court.
What does it take to declare a genocide when it happens? If you look at history, for instance, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Rwanda, etc., there's many examples on the African continent. They were only declared genocides after the fact.
Yeah, so, you can bring a matter of a case of genocide when there is an ongoing genocide, and you can also bring it after the genocide has happened. But really, there are three things that South Africa would have to prove in order to establish that actually genocide is ongoing in Gaza. The one, and this is provided in Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. The first one is that there are genocidal acts. South Africa has to prove that there are genocidal acts that are being committed by Israel against a protected group, and the convention defines a protected group as a racial, ethnic, or national or religious group, and that the acts must have been committed with the intent to destroy the group. So you have to show that, in fact, through its military operation in Gaza, rather, Israel has committed acts of genocide with intent to destroy the people of Palestine. And the last one is that there must actually be genocidal acts, which include killing of a protected group, or causing serious bodily harm to a protected group, or inflicting conditions of life on the protected group with the intent to destroy the group in whole or in part. So South Africa is arguing that the acts that have been committed by Israel in Gaza since 7th of October 2003 fall within the definition of what constitutes a genocide in terms of Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. But with that said, the case that South Africa is making on the 11th and 12th of this month is not that there's actually indeed, South Africa does not necessarily have to prove that there are in fact acts of genocide that have been committed in Gaza, because you'll remember that for this week, South Africa is seeking provisional measures. They're arguing that that Israel should suspend its military operation in Gaza pending the determination of the full case. And for them to be able to make that case, they merely have to show that on the pleaded facts, the acts that they complain of are reasonably capable of falling within the definition of a genocide convention. So it's not actually, they don't actually have to prove that a genocide is happening for the provisional measures. They merely have to show that the acts that are complained of are reasonably capable of falling within the genocide convention.
In your learned opinion, it's an open and shut case?
I don't think it's an open and shut case. International law is, there are also other political factors at play. It's not, it's not just a merely a legal issue. That being said, on the legal front, I think South Africa makes a really compelling case, and I think there are really high prospects of success, specifically on the provisional measures. So I think if you purely go judging it on a legal basis, I think on my assessment, I think there are high probabilities that they will be successful, but there may well be other factors at play which have nothing to do with the actual legal nature of the case.
Such as?
Political. Obviously I'm not properly qualified to comment on those factors, but I think, if you listen to a lot of commentators, they do say that, at the international stage, including within the court, it's not always purely a matter of who has the most compelling legal case. So I suspect, this case might not necessarily be immune to that, but we would hope that, it would be purely a legal matter as it's supposed to be, and nothing else would be at play.
Because, Mr. Malusi, what is the difference between this process and what is happening at the United Nations Security Council? What is it that this court can do that the United Security Council has failed to do?
Well, for starters, and the UN resolution that was for, I think came about last year, was to suspend operations, for Israel to suspend operations to allow for aid to go into the Gaza Strip. There was not any finding on whether or not Israel has been committing acts of genocide in Israel. And that's the main difference between this case and that. And that being said, if should the ICJ find that Israel has committed acts of genocide in Gaza, Israel is bound by the order of the ICJ. But if it doesn't comply with the order of the ICJ, which has often happened in the past, where member states have been found to have been violated certain international laws and are ordered by the ICJ to do certain things, they don't do it. South Africa has recourse in terms of the ICJ statute to approach the Security Council for assistance. But the member states, as you would know, of the UN Security Council have veto powers in respect of all decisions or all resolutions of the UN, and the US in the past has vetoed virtually all resolutions that relate to Israel-Palestine. So it may well be that if the ICJ finds in favor of South Africa and it orders Israel to desist and stop committing acts of genocide in Gaza, and South Africa approaches the Security Council for assistance, it may not get assistance. That being said, the Genocide Convention does make complicity to genocide a punishable offense, and if the U.S. were to stop orders of the ICJ from being implemented, they would be complicit to acts of genocide, which also would be a crime under the Genocide Convention.
When you take a look or assess other role players in this conflict, to your knowledge, who is supporting Israel? Where are they getting their weapons from, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I'm not properly qualified to speak on that, but I mean, the U.S. has shown support to Israel since the events of 7th of October, and other European states. But other European countries, including France, actually have reneged a bit and have said that, should the ICJ find that Israel has committed acts of genocide in the Gaza Strip, they would do what's in their power, as they're also obligated by the Genocide Convention as signatory members to help stop the genocide that is happening in the Gaza Strip. So, I think a lot of countries have shown support, including Malaysia, and other countries have shown support to South Africa's application, and hopefully other member states to the Genocide Convention would, if Israel is found to have committed acts of genocide, come to the Palestinian people's assistance as they're obligated under the Genocide Convention.
Thank you for attempting to answer it. When we take a look, or rather your assessment of the UN Security Council in all of this, it only has 5 permanent members. There will be China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. What has been your assessment of the United Nations in dealing with this conflict?
The Secretary General has come out to say that, there's been multiple reports from special rapporteurs, and also, like I said, the UN Secretary General to the effect that, what is happening in the Gaza Strip is a crisis, and that something needs to imminently happen to stop the ongoing military operations by Israel in Gaza, and so. There are a lot of opinions to that effect, but there's nothing actually that has been done in concrete except for the ceasefire that happened that allowed for humanitarian aid in Gaza. And I think that probably is one of the reasons why South Africa felt compelled to bring this case about, because it doesn't seem that there would be anything that would happen if a case is not brought before the ICJ to the effect that there are genocidal acts that are happening in Gaza. So hopefully we'll find some sort of resolution to the conflict for the sake of the people of Palestine.
Also, Thamsanqa, because this is a provisional measures application and not the entire hearing. What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so in the main application, South Africa seeks a declarator from the ICJ that, one, Israel has committed acts of genocide in violation of its obligation under the Genocide Convention, and that, two, it desists or stops committing acts of genocide, and three, a commitment that it will not commit acts of genocide against the people of Palestine in the future, and four, South Africa seeks reparations for the people of Palestine who have suffered in the Gaza Strip. So that's the main application. On the provisional measures side, as I said earlier, South Africa seeks an immediate ceasefire pending the determination of the full application, which will come later. So that's what on Thursday is going to be heard. So it's a provisional measures, which is an immediate, where the relief is an immediate ceasefire by Israel in the Gaza Strip.
Is it curious that only one country in the entire world has brought this case?
You may argue that it is. I don't know why other countries didn't bring it. It is. You may argue that it is, but as I said, South Africa has been getting a lot of support since it filed this application from various other countries, and there has been commitment from other countries that should the ICJ find in favor of South Africa or Palestine in this case, that they would do whatever is in their power to assist as obligated by the Genocide Convention. So whether the case, and then also there's an indication that some countries or some private actors might, might support South Africa's application to the ICJ. So we are to see how it's all going to play out. But there's already an indication that some countries are behind South Africa's application.
Thamsanqa Malusi is a legal analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this afternoon.